Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Doom of Dimensions is the set that keeps on giving, with support for myriad themes I've yet to touch upon. And today, we're going to cover a theme I've actually talked about a lot, but it's somehow never gotten a proper explained video. The story of the Dracoslayer and the Dracoverlord has fascinated me since the beginning. Ever since Master Pendulum dropped the lore about their quest to recover their missing memory, their battle against the Draco Fiends, and whatever the heck Dragon Alchemy is, it was clear to me that there was something going on under the surface, ready to slowly reveal itself, as well as all of its juicy story bits. We would see the two clash after reaching the heights of their power, then watch the next generation of both sides clash in a strange kind of proxy war, until it all just kind of stopped. After the True Kings and True Dracos made their debut, we'd only get small snippets of epilogue content, showing Metal Foes and Crystron carving up the powers of the defeated True Kings, until finally they reared their ugly heads again in this set. And while True Draco is the theme that's gotten the bulk of additional support this go around, and we already have a video on them, they did sneak in a few Dracoslayer cards into the mix. So what better time to tackle them than now? So be ready to pass on the knowledge of ancient times to battle the darkness of the future with Dracoslayer Explained. Real quick before we get started, one of the many themes to cover out of Doom of Dimensions is DDs, and I need your help to cover it. Ever since I started working on this channel full time, my Patreon has had a goal where if I get 200 patrons, I would cover the theme, and now seems like as good a time as any to accomplish that goal. If you have $1 to spare each month, please consider supporting me over on Patreon or right here as a YouTube member. I'll be counting both, because it really does make a huge difference here. Not only do higher tiers get you early access to videos and to parts of my Discord, it also means I'd have more money to hire editors, which would mean I'd have more time to do other outrageous things. It's no exaggeration that if just 1% of my audience gave a single dollar, I'd never have to worry about a video underperforming ever again, and I could invest in a lot more lore content. Turns out that stuff is pretty risky. Thank you all for your time, and now, let's get to the explaining. So what's the deal with Dracoslayers? Well, for the purposes of this video, I'll also be adding Dracoverlord into the mix, because Luster and Vector are far too intertwined to talk about them separately. In general, they have a lot of dragons, though due to the fact that Luster has both given and received power from many of the tribes they came into contact with, that type line can shift quite a bit. The level 4 ones are all Pendulum monsters, giving them access to some of the game's most powerful tactics and recursion, and they love playing into the bit, often destroying one another to trigger their effects while setting up your face-up extra deck. First, let's talk about the progenitors. Luster Pendulum the Dracoslayer is a level 4 light dragon tuner pendulum monster with 1850 attack, 0 defense, and a scale of 5. As a pendulum spell, once per turn, if you have a card in your other pendulum zone, you can destroy that card, and if you do, add a card from your deck to your hand with the same name as that card. As a monster, you can't special summon any fusion, synchro, or Xyz monsters using this card as material, unless they're Dracoslayer monsters. So despite being the game's first level 4 pendulum tuner monster, it was only in service of this theme, but thankfully it helped you access some pretty solid cards. And because they didn't future-proof against link summoning, it is still compatible with possibly the most powerful summoning method in the game. As a pendulum spell, this card goes absolutely feral. Lots of pendulum monsters have effects that trigger when destroyed, so Luster lets you have your cake and eat it too. All at once, you get to keep your opposite scale because you search a replacement, trigger that card's effect, and load a card into your extra deck for future pendulum summons. It's the whole package, and you better believe this saw widespread play because of it, in no small part due to how it lined up perfectly with performages. We can also take a look at their normal form, Master Pendulum the Dracoslayer, which is a level 4 light dragon normal pendulum monster with 1950 attack, 0 defense, and a scale of 3. As a pendulum spell, once while it's in your pendulum zone, you can target a card in a pendulum zone and destroy it, which doesn't have the same utility as Luster did, can help you combat opposing scales, and in a pinch, free up one of your own to set up a new scale. This card is Luster Pendulum the Dracoslayer, continuing his journey to uncover the secrets of Dragon Alchemy, believing it's the key to dispelling his curse and restoring his memory. His power continues to grow, perhaps the same power used by the Draco Fiends.
something we can tell definitively because of the background. The art is sporting the same sigil as all the Amorphage cards do, but that's getting a bit into the lore weeds, and I already made 2 whole videos about that stuff. This is certainly the far less popular version of Luster and doesn't see as much play, especially now that you have a multitude of Dracoslayers to work with, but it opens up the door to some normal monster synergies that'll go along nicely with another monster we'll be seeing in just a bit. You could say it just doesn't quite have the same luster. Next is Luster Pendulum's eternal rival, Vector Pendulum the Dracoverlord, a level 4 Dark Dragon normal pendulum monster with 1850 attack, 0 defense, and a scale of 3. As a spell, it negates all card effects in your opponent's pendulum zones, showing off their dominance of the mechanic. This overlord overran an entire world with his army of Draco Fiends, using his dragon alchemy to convert all life into his terrible minion. The source of this power is unidentified, and probably extra-dimensional. This has spawned so many theories. Once again, go watch the lore video, but we know now for a fact that Dual Terminal and the Dracoslayer storyline are connected, and the Dual Terminal has a ton of examples of some force or another controlling or corrupting others to do their bidding, and Dragon Alchemy seems to fit that pattern pretty nicely. As for the card itself, it didn't necessarily see play because of its own factors, rather that you needed to play a Dracoverlord to make other Dracoslayer support work well. And it didn't help that if your opponent wasn't playing any Pendulum cards, then Vector's Pendulum effect doesn't really do anything. And their upgraded form, Lector Pendulum the Dracoverlord, doesn't fare much better. It's a level 4 Dark Dragon Pendulum monster with 1950 attack, 0 defense, and a scale of 5. As a spell, it negates the effects of face-up pendulum monsters while your opponent controls them, and as a monster, at the start of the damage step, if this card battles a pendulum monster, destroy both that monster and this card, which is a mandatory effect. Thematically, the effect might be a way to show their further dominance over pendulums, as not even the mightiest can stand up to a duel with Lector, even if it takes both of them down. But in practice, that means it also loses to all pendulum monsters, even one significantly weaker than itself. Once again, these are cards you wouldn't be playing unless you needed to resolve other effects, or you needed some very specific answers. And thankfully, I can get away with insulting Lector Pendulum like this because I've still got him locked up in the orbital platform brig for whenever we get the storyline thing going again. Alright, those are the 4 original Draco monsters. Now it's time to talk about their disciples. If you've played true Dracos, these might look familiar. The 3 tribes that Luster Pendulum visited during their original pilgrimage, Ignites, Magispectors, and Dinomists, all gave some of their power to Luster, and in return, some of that dragon alchemy affected members of those tribes, resulting in the creation of the true Dracos, as well as these Dracoslayers. First up is Ignis Phoenix the Dracoslayer, a level 4 Fire Warrior monster with 1700 attack, 1900 defense, and a scale of 7, that is always treated as an Ignite card. As a spell, during your main phase, you can shuffle a face-up Pendulum monster from your extra deck into the deck, then add a non-Pendulum Dracoslayer or Ignite monster from your deck to your hand. As a monster, if this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Dracoslayer or Ignite monster from your deck except a copy of this card, and if you do, it's treated as a tuner. So that Pendulum effect is kind of, lacking, unless you're playing some very specific builds. However, the monster effect cooks. You're incentivized to destroy it as quickly and as often as possible to get more monsters, and because it comes out as a tuner, synchros are now on the table, and this time, it doesn't come with a big restriction stapled onto it. Honestly, it's very nice to see that even when undergoing Draco mutation, Ignis Phoenix is still carrying on the legacy of victory through blowing themselves up. Never, ever stop blowing up. Dynamite Powerload the Dracoslayer is a level 4 Water Machine Pendulum monster with 1700 attack, 1800 defense, and a scale of 6, and is always treated as a Dynomist monster. As a spell, you can target a Dracoslayer or Dynomist card in your other Pendulum zone and special summon it. And as a monster, if this card is tributed, you can add a face-up Dracoslayer or Dynomist Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand except a copy of this card. It's not very flashy, but it does provide some very important utility. Pendulums lost a lot of their power in the change to Master Rule 4 revision. Now, even if a Pendulum deck has the opportunity to fill their extra deck with a ton of monsters, they can't Pendulum summon many of them at once without the help of a Link monster to give them zones to summon to. However, the restriction that hampers such things is not applied to the hand. So as long as the monsters fit the established scales, you can summon as many of them as you want from your hand. So cards that put your pendulums into the hand, in effect, increase the power of your next pendulum summon. And of course, its spell effect is nothing to sneeze at either. Turns out getting free monsters is pretty slick. So good on Dynamite for making sure we always have access to a power load of cards. Majesty Pegasus the Dracoslayer is a level 4 wind spellcaster pendulum monster with 1500 attack and defense and a scale of 2, and is always treated as a Magispector card. As a spell, if you have a Dracoslayer or Magispector card in your other pendulum zone, you can add a Dracoslayer pendulum monster with a different original name than that card from your deck to your hand, then you can destroy a card in your pendulum zone. As a monster, as a quick effect, you can discard this card, and for the rest of the turn, your opponent can't target Dracoslayer monsters you control with card effects. Also, they can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. If this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dracoslayer card or is pendulum summoned, you can add a field spell card from your deck to your hand, then discard a card. Yeah, so out of the existing trio, we're looking at probably the most dangerous of them all. Like, if you break it down, it's a search spell while in the pendulum zone every turn with an optional destruction of your own pendulum spells. You can also pitch it from hand to give your Dracoslayers the Magispector text, and any on-theme effect that gets this onto the field, pendulum summoning included, gets you any field spell. Any field spell, one of the most powerful classifications of cards in the game. Field spells help to define and empower the themes they're tied to, and now for a summon and a discard, you can have your pick of any of them. This card is a menace, and you should prioritize making sure it's in rotation as early and as often as possible to take advantage of all of its benefits. Maybe keep a list of all your favorite heinous field spells on hand. And hey, I'll help you get started. Isn't it weird that the Spellcaster monster can search you Secret Village of the Spellcasters, a field spell that locks down spell cards that somehow hasn't been banned yet? Just a thought. And with that, we've covered all the pendulum monsters the theme has to offer. Now, we're making a bit of a higher level pivot with some interesting properties. Masterpiece, the True Dracoslayer, is a level 8 light dragon monster with 2950 attack and defense that can't be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned by attributing a Dracoslayer and a Dracoverlord monster, and can't be special summoned by other ways. Once per turn, during either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And if this card and its owner's control is destroyed by an opponent's card, either by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Dracoslayer monster and a Dracoverlord monster from your deck. Now, at time of recording, we have a ton of Dracoslayer monsters, so that's not going to be an issue. Now you've just got to find a way to get one of those Dracoverlords into play. You know, the ones we're only begrudgingly playing. The payoff isn't terrible though. It's a big body with an Omni Negate that can float into the component monsters. The only issue, even today, is that there really just isn't any good Dracoverlords to play. This means you aren't investing into many of them, and if you can't get an Overlord into rotation, you have a big level 8 dork that's just rotting in your hand. Though to be fair, as time has gone on, the game has made good ways to search this card out, so it's not untenable to play a single copy of it just in case. You know, they say that opposites attract, but since Luster and Vector are basically clones of each other, I suppose the inverse also applies. Masterpiece, the True Dracoverlord, is a level 10 Dark Worm monster with 2950 attack and defense that requires 3 tributes to normal summon and can't be normal set. To tribute summon this card face up, you can tribute continuous spell and trap cards you control as well as monsters. When your opponent activates a monster effect in the hand or field and you control this tribute summoned card as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And if this tribute summoned card is destroyed by battle or by an opponent's card effect while in its owner's monster zone, you can skip your opponent's next main phase. So this card has a lot of parallels with Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King, a card that we're skipping for this video because while it's a True Draco, it's not a Draco Slayer. But this does have the True Draco Tribute Substitution effect, though it doesn't gain any particular benefits depending on what you tribute for it. Instead, it gains a kind of negate, though unlike True Draco Slayer, it's not a true Omni Negate, only stopping monster effects and even then, only those that activate in the hand or on the field. So it is kinda limited. Also, notably, if your opponent takes this out after it's been tribute summoned, they better be prepared to lose a whole main phase, similar to how the Ritual Dracoverlord can do the same. This card occupies a strange zone where it's easier to access than True Dracoslayer, but isn't nearly as impactful, is it? And with True Draco Slaying King being back to 1 in the TCG, it's not like you have to play this as a substitute. Honestly, the thing that's tilting me right now is that we're getting Masterpiece's Corruption arc before we see the Zodiac upgrades like with Metalfoes and Crystron. What's the deal with that? Now, let's move on to our extra deck offerings. Well, mostly extra deck. The Dracoslayers run the gamut of the extra deck monster types available at the time, while our good friend the Dracoverlord has a ritual, and it feels weird to slot them in amongst that previous section, so let's call this a bridge of sorts. Besides, if this was a Rush Duel card, then it would be in the extra deck, so there. Amorphactor Pain, the Imagination Dracoverlord, is a level 8 Earth Dragon Ritual monster with 2950 attack and 2500 defense that you can Ritual Summon with Amorphous Persona. If Ritual Summoned, your opponent skips their next main phase 1, and while on the field, it negates the effects of face-up fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters while they're on the field. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, you can add a Dracoverlord monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. So this is a pretty solid monster, all things considered. A bit less so now that the coverage of negation doesn't cover all the extra deck monster types, but it is still a lot of coverage. And unless your opponent is already set up, them missing their main phase 1 puts the brakes on their momentum hard. However, the way you're supposed to summon it is not great. Normally, one would expect a ritual monster to come with an accompanying ritual spell, but in this case, Amorphous Persona is a field spell card. And for all the people who got comfortable ritual summoning a ton of times using Libromancer's field spell, it's not its on-field effect that does it, but its graveyard one. Now, that wasn't the only option available around that time. Odd Eye's Advent fit it pretty well, but the fact remained that its own infrastructure didn't really support getting this out, and would end up being teched into random ritual decks with generic summoning effects to add some more stun to their end board, contributing a great deal to why people roll their eyes at you whenever you say you're playing Drytron or Megalith. I'd feel bad for you, but between Magician of Black Chaos Max and Natasha looping, I don't know, I think you're on your own. Moving on to the extra deck, Dinoster Power, the Mighty Dracoslayer, is a level 8 Water Dragon monster with 2000 attack and 2950 defense, requiring a Dracoslayer Pendulum monster and another Pendulum monster as material. It must first be special summoned from the extra deck by attributing the above cards. Pendulum monster cards in your monster zones and pendulum zones can't be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects, and once per turn, you can special summon a Dracoslayer Pendulum monster from your hand or grave, but it can't be used as fusion material. That's going to be a recurring effect coming up. Our extra deck Dracoslayers can summon a Pendulum monster from a particular zone, but they can't be used to make another that matches the monster card type of what summoned it. Back in the Perform Age Performapal days, this was a huge staple for a variety of reasons. You got back your Dracoslayers that ended up in the grave thanks to Xyz shenanigans, or you just summoned them from your hand. On top of the fact that it provided your more frail monsters and your scales a lot of protection, a huge consideration when Wavering Eyes was determining whole games. So overall, this isn't a flashy card, but does a lot of work across many different angles, making for a mighty useful card. Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Dracoslayer, is a level 8 Fire Dragon Synchro monster with 2850 attack and 0 defense, requiring a tuner and one or more non-tuner Pendulum monsters as material. Once per turn, you can target a Pendulum monster on the field or a card in the Pendulum zone and destroy it, and if you do, shuffle a card on the field into the deck. And once per turn, you can special summon a Dracoslayer monster from your deck in defense position, but it can't be used as synchro material for a summon. Dinoster Power might have been a bit boring, but Ignister makes up for it in spades. This was easily one of the most powerful things you could be making in Pendulum decks once the ball got rolling, and it was not to be messed with. Non-targeting removal that put the subject back into the deck ensured that, unless you hit a very lucky roll or searched out that card with a specific effect, the victim was gone forever. And it was a pretty accessible effect. Even if you didn't have any other Pendulum cards for this thing to pop for the initial part of its effect, it also came with a way to just pull one right out of the deck. And that effect has only gotten better with time. Now you can use it to summon out Ignis Phoenix the Dracoslayer, pop it, and then replace it with another Dracoslayer that doesn't have the non-synchro summoning restriction and comes out as a tuner. Or better yet, summon Majesty Pegasus to get that field spell search effect. However, it does not make it any less funny that we would eventually get the Ignister monsters, making this card very difficult to search by itself. Seriously, they couldn't have thought of anything else to call either of these that would be less confusing, huh? Magister Paladin the Ascending Dracoslayer is a rank 4 Wind Dragon Xyz monster with 1850 attack and 2000 defense, requiring 2 level 4 Pendulum monsters as material. When this card is Xyz summoned, you can add a Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand during the end phase of this turn. And once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card to special summon a face-up Dracoslayer Pendulum monster from your extra deck, but it can't be used as Xyz material for a summon. This is the summon effect out of the 3 extra deck Dracoslayers that's been hit the most, as summoning Pendulum monsters directly from the extra deck is very restricted. And while its unique effect isn't bad, the delay on the search is pretty brutal, even if you get to search out any Pendulum monster because of it. Combined with the often fraught relationship between Pendulum and Xyz monsters, and you have yourself a monster struggling for relevance more and more as time goes on. Luster may be catching some sweet air on Kieran, but it's certainly not ascending any usage charts. That puts all the Dracoslayer monsters behind us. Now let's talk about those spell cards. Forge of the True Dracos is a normal spell card that you can activate if a Dracoslayer monster that is not a Pendulum monster and a Dracoverlord monster are on the field. It shuffles as many cards on the field as possible into the deck, then you can special summon a Dracoslayer or Dracoverlord monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Now, because it only pulls from the main deck, the primary target for this seems to be Masterpiece the True Dracoslayer. The other targets are the level 4 Pendulums, which I wouldn't ever waste an effect like this on, and Amor Factor Pain, which will maintain the blanket negation and the float, but won't get the main phase 1 skip, which is half the reason you play that card to begin with. The new Dracoverlord Masterpiece is also an option, but like with Amor Factor, you lose basically any reason to actually play that card when you don't tribute summon it. Basically, you should only ever consider playing this if Dracoslayer Masterpiece is in your deck list, and for that to happen, you're going to have a good reason to do that, because while I would argue the Dracoslayer Masterpiece is the most playable Dracoverlord we've seen so far, I wouldn't want to give it up to set this card into motion. The only forge this card has is a forgery, because it is on fraud alert. Draco Face-Off is a quick play spell card that has you revealing a Dracoslayer Pendulum monster and a Dracoverlord Pendulum monster from your deck, and your opponent randomly picks one of them, and you can either place that card in your Pendulum zone or special summon it, and you add the other card to your extra deck face up. Going to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, this card was used all the time, and for good reason. Despite the random nature of the selection, because the Dracoslayer and Dracoverlord monsters at the time both had a 3 and a 5 scale option, you could ensure you get the scale that you wanted no matter what by making sure that number was on both options. If you wanted a monster, it was probably going to be the Dracoslayer one. But thankfully, you can engineer it so that no matter what, you get what you want. Either the 50-50 goes your way and you summon the Dracoslayer, the 50-50 goes your way and you put it into the Pendulum scale, in which case it is a great card to utilize, or the 50-50 doesn't go your way and it's loaded into your extra deck to be Pendulum summoned later. The worst part, again, is that the Dracoverlords had to be involved, but for the time, even Vector was kinda good. Pendulums were running rampant, so while it's nowhere near as useful now as it used to be during its prime, it wasn't terrible to at least stymie some of your opponent's effects during that period. This card was an all-timer and can still be very useful in modern builds, especially with the expanded range of Dracoslayer Pendulum monsters we have access to. And like with most things, once we get the wave of Dracoverlord Pendulum monsters, this will get even more dangerous. Though I don't think anything they print from this point on is going to outdo the aura of this art. They gave him the perfect final boss setup. Good lord. Draco Standoff is a continuous spell card that, when activated, lets you add a True Draco or True King monster, or a Dracoslayer or Dracoverlord Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. Also, if any number of face-up True Draco and or True King monsters you control are destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave, you can target one of them and place it face-up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell. That last part, we don't really care about too much. That's for the True King and True Draco crowd to worry about. Though it does give them some really good tribute fodder to work with. A thing I definitely keyed in on when this was first being revealed because I'm a smart kiddo, let me tell you. And it does help with Dracoverlord Masterpiece, so it does have some utility for us. But what we're looking at is that search effect. It's not as explosive as Draco Face-Off, but it does provide a lot more stability and options. With this, we can get things like the Masterpieces in our hand when we need them, or if we just need one of the cool Pendulum monsters, we can snap those up. It's basically a Rhoda that sticks around longer than I would personally like, but it is still very useful, even if it is a bit standoffish. Dragonic Pendulum is a field spell card that boosts all Dracoslayer monsters on the field's attack and defense by 300. If a dragon Dracoslayer monster you control activates its effect, except during the damage step, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. And if this card on the field is destroyed, you can either add to your hand or special summon a Dracoslayer or Dracoverlord monster from your deck. This card harkens back to Dragonic Diagram, a very powerful field spell for true kings and true Dracos. Here, it's slightly less proactive. Basically everything about this card requires others to work, and it's not exactly paying off wild dividends. Like, the stat boost? That's nice. The floating effect? I can dig it. I mean, we're pendulums. Of course we're destroying our own cards for value. It's the second effect that gets me. This was released alongside all the new Dracoslayer Pendulum monsters, and while they all have activated effects, none of them are dragons. And if we look at our older Dracoslayers, Luster and Master don't have activated effects, at least not while they're dragon-type monsters. This means the additional removal from this card is only accessible when paired with the 3 extra deck Dracoslayers and the Masterpiece one, which is pretty restrictive. Thankfully, despite not being on theme, it's searchable by Majesty Pegasus, but when compared to all the other options you can grab, why would you want to? Heck, the monsters on this art aren't even the Pendulum versions of them! What is going on here? Alright, that's all the Dracoslayer cards, but what do we do with them? Well, that's the tricky part. Pendulum decks, when built well, can perform cold fusion, especially if they don't place any restrictions, and Dracoslayers rarely do. So instead of focusing on strong payoffs, since the theme already has plenty, we'll try and zero in on what cards will best get you all your Dracoslayer cards into rotation so they can pick things up from there. So what can we do to help them out? Duelist Alliance has always been funny for this theme, and I'm not talking about the set. As long as you have a card in your Pendulum zone, this turns into any Pendulum name-stamped card, with the sole exception of Pendulum Machine, which I'm sure you'll find in your heart to forgive. This means more access to the original Dracoslayer monsters since they all have Pendulum in their name, but also spell and trap cards like Extra Pendulum to get an extra Pendulum summon, though only from the extra deck, so be sure you get a good Link monster before you do that. Or, if you're in it for the long run, play Soul Pendulum to adjust your scales and bank some counters to get even more Pendulum summons. Every Pendulum deck these days needs a good Link monster to help them out, and thankfully, most have a good friend in Beyond the Pendulum. It gets you a Pendulum monster of your choice immediately, but you better get ready to Pendulum summon soon afterwards if you don't want to lose your effects. And from there, you can evolve it into Exceed the Pendulum for 3 downward pointing arrows for maximum Pendulum. It can also recover a Pendulum from your extra deck, and can summon them out of your hand or grave as long as you have the right scales. But if you're looking for some interruption, you could also use Zephyra Metaltron. It also gives you 3 downward pointing arrows and can temporarily banish from both fields, though you can only hit monsters summoned from the extra deck on both sides, which is not as universally useful as I would like. Odd Eye's Revolution Dragon is another tutor we can play, but only for our original Dracoslayers and Dracoverlords, though that still ain't bad. The Pendulum spell effect ain't terrible either, letting you blow it up to bring back any of your extra deck Dracoslayers from the graveyard. As for a silly tech pick, well, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is littered with evil dragons, especially those that seek to combine with the forms of other dragons to reach the true heights of their power. So it seems thematically appropriate to try and run Supreme King Zark. We've already got the Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz Dragon materials accounted for, so all we need is a Pendulum Dragon, and well, I don't know if you've noticed, but the Luster and Vector forms kind of fit the bill. Though, admittedly, it's far easier to get that Odd Eye's Revolution Dragon into the graveyard. Cycle through your Dracoslayer extra deck monsters, and if your opponent blows through your field, drop that Dragon's Mirror and watch them squirm. And that's all I've got to say about Dracoslayers. It's difficult to sit here and say that they deserved better because, for their time, Luster and the gang ruled the format, but it did so as part of a general Pendulum pool that used many of the best elements of other themes without necessarily letting any of their component themes shine through. Maybe with this wave of Draco storyline revisitation, we'll get those Dracoverlord monsters, and we can see a proper deck form around them, showing us the true power of the struggle between conquest and community. But seriously, we've got to get the Zodiac update first. Can you imagine how funny it would be if they were tier 0 again? But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are the Dracoslayer cards a magnificent menagerie of powerful playables, or are they no longer Draco slaying? And which one's your favorite? I really can't get over how baller Ignister Prominence looks. It's every Dragoon's dream armor. Let me know your favorite down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Be sure to click one of my videos in the sidebar to help me show up on your homepage, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out.
Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout while helping out the channel. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander, Upstairs Media, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hair Bear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion Jamesy Picata, Meme King, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yaminair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bat Boos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, the Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast, and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, and Thorak, a Random Pup, Blade Runner 1034, Blitzwolf, Brandon Guzman, Jazz Ghost, Christopher Fuss, again, Chris B, Cool Trainer Dark, Dr. Entity RIP, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Julian Marquez, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru02, Manga Pages, Natiel Lee Alexander, Not Al Gore, Obsidian, Pombo, Rhyme Kairos, Rogue Wolf, Shizuki Nijimura, Simic Toadstool, Sir Knight JCB, Sphilia, Stepfin Huntsman, The Legendary Raven, The Queen of Time, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Tristan O'Meara, and Zal Dreka, as well as all the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to hear my thoughts on the lore so far, check out these videos where I talk about the story of the Dracoslayer. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.